Are you looking to accelerate your learning in a specific area or skill? Or maybe you just want to become more productive so that you can get more of the right things done. Or maybe you just need some extra motivation so that you can do the things that you know that you should do. If any of those things are of interest to you, then you're in the right place. I'm Brandon Eastman with BeBetterIndustries.com, and on this YouTube channel, we talk about how to perform at your peak so that you can amplify your success. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and hit the bell so you see every new video every single Monday, and hit the like button if you find value from this interview. We're here today with Bogdan Juncewicz, who is the best-selling author, speaker, and coach who specializes in accelerated learning, motivation, and productivity, and has spoken on multiple continents while also being the founder of the learning platform Potencia. Bogdan, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here with us, my friend. Thanks so much.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here. Really, really excited for this.
So Bogdan, you specialize in a lot of different areas. And I'm just curious, what's a little bit about your backstory to give us some context into how you found yourself really working to make a difference in these succinct areas for different people?
So everything started, I often say, back when I was about 13 years old. And I made the craziest, and I look back on it as the best decision of my life so far, which was to voluntarily drop out of high school. And so for most people, that's not even something they would contemplate doing. But it's a decision I made together with my parents. I was about 13, 14 years old, dropped out of high school, left the education system behind, and instead decided to self-teach myself the things that I feel like the education system fails to teach us growing up. So that's how it started. And then after that point, I spent the 8-9 hours that other kids were spending in school instead learning by myself. So like reading hundreds of books, more than 500 books on various topics, going through online courses, reading through like research papers and studying the topics that I found interesting, going and attending like live events and seminars with my dad on the weekends, and learning from all the different sources that go beyond the traditional kind of education system and the topics which go beyond the education system. So I found that kind of the statement that I've become kind of known for is the fact that like the education system is broken. Like a lot of people have started to kind of think that and become aware of that fact. And there's a lot of like amazing statistics that now show the fact that the education system like truly is broken and misses so many key components of what's meant to prepare us for the real world. Like one of the ones that I read recently was like, if you go to college for like 3 or 4 years, like, and you get a degree, you only about 27% of people that have a college degree end up working in the same industry that they got their degree from. And then what's even more shocking is that of those 27%, only about half of them are actually satisfied with the work they do. So you can go and you can spend like hundreds of thousands of dollars, like years and years of your life studying, getting a college degree, a piece of paper, which is becoming more and more worthless. And you got about a 13% chance of working in that industry and actually being like decently satisfied with that, let alone the other topics like relationships, health and fitness, and so on. So I dropped out of high school, spent that time kind of self-learning through different methods, and that kind of led me to what I do today.
That is so impressive. It's really cool, Bogdan, how you've stumbled across the world of personal development after making that decision to drop out of the traditional education system. Because, you know, a lot of people, I mean, look at how society pressures us to do specific things, go a specific direction, go to college, graduate, get a job, retire, all these things. And I feel like that was kind of like a gift that was given to you to really have that filter that allows you to see all these different paths. And personally in my life, I went through school, but I had to figure out finances and emotions and relationships. I had to figure out all that on my own. And what I thought was really interesting with you is in your book, Skilled Success, you talk about all these different areas of life that we're not taught about in the traditional education system. You know, we're taught about history, we're taught math. And while those have their benefits, your book really goes deep into those areas that we weren't really developed in. So what areas do you think were missed in the traditional education system, and how can one go about making up time in those areas to improve there?
So of course, so big ones like you look at university, kind of most people would agree on the fact that when you look at life, there's a few kind of standout areas that directly affect your quality of life. Big ones being like finances, a lot of people in debt, a lot of people struggling financially. So that's a big one. Of course, relationships, like the quality of our relationships largely becomes kind of the quality of our life. Beyond that point, just our personal kind of development. Most people, they never taught, myself included, in school, like how to actually think, like how does your mind work? How does the brain work? How do you like set goals? How do you achieve goals? How do you like think in a new way about your life beyond just the traditional kind of rules and expectations that are given to us? So that's of course a big one. That's the main one that I kind of specialize in and have studied in detail and now coach people on. And then like beyond that point, so there's like spirituality, never covered, massive one as well. Health and fitness. A lot of people, like the statistics on that one are particularly staggering, like obesity rates rising, people suffering diseases and stuff like that, that could potentially be like reversible and healable and so on. We never talk really about nutrition, what to eat, how to take care of our body, how to take care of our mind. So those to me are the main ones.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think someone can do? What would you recommend to somebody? Let's use an example of somebody who feels maybe lost in their life right now. Somebody who doesn't know what direction they want to go in. Someone who might have gone through traditional education, maybe even the college system and further education, but they still feel like, hey, I don't even know if this is something I want to do. You know, I'm not sure what direction I want to go in. What would you recommend the first step for someone to take who's in that situation?
For me, the main recommendation, this is where I start. For example, I've coached a lot of clients around the world. The starting point for me is clarity. Like it's very hard. Like even productivity starts with clarity. You can't be like productive because productivity is like driving a car somewhere, a metaphorical car. Like you can't know which path to take unless you know the destination you're going after. Same with motivation. Like it's hard to be motivated if you don't know what you're going towards. So a lot of those kind of characteristics start with what's known as kind of clarity, which most people aren't aware is something that can be generated. First and foremost, like the importance of it. So they did a study and they took a whole group of people and they asked them questions such as like, what do you want? Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like some of these like kind of questions that get passed around on social media and stuff like that. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Who do you want to be? Like, what do you want your life to look like? What do you see in your future? These type of questions. And they took the people and they found that the people that were able to answer these questions quickly, more confidently, with a lot less hesitation, not like maybe in the future I kind of want this, but instead they were like, oh, okay, I want this, this, and this. Like those people that had clarity, they had achieved more in the past and they tracked them over months and years, and those people achieved more in the future. And so the first kind of key is like figuring out what you want, and that will create a kind of a whole positive ripple effect of like what you can do. From that point, of course, like that's kind of very philosophical, getting more to a practical point of view. Most people, again, don't realize, and I didn't realize it until I learned from other high achievers and modeled kind of their behavior, was the fact that this is something that can be generated. Like clarity isn't like random. It can be generated through our habits and through our behaviors. Like a lot of some of the key like main ones off the top of my head are things like journaling. Like so many of the world's highest achievers throughout history, like the Mark Twain, like Charles Darwin, like presidents and stuff like that, would journal. They'll take time to journal. Another one is like taking just time to think. Like a lot of people were so busy that we never take time to actually think. A lot of top CEOs of like Fortune 500 companies, they'll set aside like 20 to 30 minutes every week to just think, like think about where the company's going, think about where the brand is going, think about where they're going personally. So like taking just half an hour to think. Meditation is another big one. So of course, there's to date now, the last number I read is like 3,000 scientific studies that all prove the positive benefits of meditation. Fortunately, this is one that's becoming much, much more popular, but still there's a lot of people that, for example, don't take 5 or 10 minutes a day. This is a habit that changed my life in a big, big way, like much greater peace of mind and so on, but just taking at least 10 minutes a day to meditate in the morning, and that will kind of raise your energy, raise your consciousness, make you think in new ways, and you can come up with new ideas and new solutions, new clarity. So that's a big one. something I do at the beginning of every month. I call it like a monthly clarity process. It's a visualization I filmed for customers and clients as well, where I'll take 90 minutes at the beginning of every month and I'll close my eyes and I'll connect with all the different areas of life. So there's a worksheet that I created around this as well, but all of the big ones, so like health and fitness and finances and my career and my relationships and all those big areas of life. And I'll sit down and I'll visualize that and connect with that, not just logically, but emotionally. And then new ideas come up in that like visualization. I'm like, I've never thought about this before, but I want this. And so now that now you can start the process of kind of bringing it into your life now that you have that clarity. So those are just, of course, a few examples, but clarity and then building some of the habits around that.
That's so powerful. Wow, you said so many gems there. I hope everyone listening really picked those up. So clarity is power, right? And from what I just heard you say, which I really liked how you referenced, if you don't have clarity, choose to have clarity. And once you choose, then even if you don't know, if it doesn't just immediately come at you, take some time to think. Take some time to get in a silent room, think, meditate. What I really got from what you just said is the results will come after you begin the behaviors.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I've said, and I reference this a lot in my programs, for example, like motivation, same applies to like clarity. It's a choice, but it's not like a choice that we can choose directly. You can't just wake up and be like, oh, I want to have clarity. Like it's not just a direct choice, but it's kind of an indirect choice. And the metaphor I often give is like laughter. Like you can't just go like, I'm going to laugh now. It's not like a choice that you can choose directly, but you can choose it kind of indirectly by being like, okay, I'm going to go watch a comedy now. Or I'm going to watch my favorite comedian, or I'm going to read jokes, or I'm going to spend time with a funny friend of mine who always makes me laugh. And by making that choice, it's kind of indirectly creating the thing you want. So that's how I kind of view these habits, like meditation, like journaling, like goal setting, like all of these habits, like you indirectly choosing to have a greater awareness of what you want to create.
So interesting. So well said too. I love that. And for those watching this video on my channel right now, you know that we're very into the practicality of these principles and philosophies. I'm all about strategy. I'm all about you don't really need to know 100% how something works. All you really need to know is what to do, go do it and get the result, right? I'm big on that.
Great.
And I want to really talk about a few different fields that you specialize in. The first one that I want to talk to you about is productivity, right? We live in a world full of distraction. I mean, I've got my cell phone right here. If I turned it on, I'd probably have 10 notifications. If I went on social media, there's always a new post that's right at the top to shoot that dopamine into my brain, right? So in a world so full of distraction, Bogdan, what is something that anyone can do in order to be more productive in their life?
Yeah. So for me, the way I view it, it breaks down to, I call it like 2 pillars of productivity. So the first one is like the purpose side. So firstly, like I truly believe like it's very hard to consciously be productive unless you know what you want first. So it starts with that and then reverse engineering that. Beyond that point, it's like kind of like if you're driving towards where you want to go, it's the strategies along the way. And so this is like the focus side. A lot of people, for example, struggle with being focused in today's kind of distracted world. I say that we live in a very, very distracted world, and there's so much, like unless you consciously take control of your productivity, like you're going to go and there's so many distractions that you're going to be overwhelmed and so on. So some basic ones, like first one is like project planning. A lot of people, when it comes to productivity, they struggle because they never really take the time to break down their goals. Like a lot of people have goals such as like write a book or build a website or start my own business or do this or do that. They have these big projects. The challenge is that they never actually make any progress on them, and they're not productive because they've never taken the time to kind of break this down into some specific things that they can do. Like write a book is not an actionable item. You're never going to be able to like put down your to-do list. You can't just put like write a book. You're going to be able to break it down from write a book or build a website or start a business. You're going to break it down. Okay, like what are the phases? Like I'm an author, so a lot of the time I spend like writing books and creating courses and so on, breaking it down. Okay, phase 1, like research. Like, okay, what can I do specific things within that? Like phase 2, okay, got to create like a table of contents for the book. And then spend time with that. Phase 3, like writing the book and so on, editing, publishing and so on, and break it down into the specific phases. And then within that, keep breaking it down until it's something that's actionable. And now you'll see your productivity kind of go up automatically, as well as your motivation goes up automatically, because now your mind has clarity. Like when things are fuzzy, we tend to like procrastinate on them. We tend to just avoid those things compared to when something's very specific, like not write a book, but you've broken that down into, okay, phase one, research for my book. Okay. From research, like, okay, let me read this book. Let me read the top 5 articles. Let me go and read this. Let me reference this. Let me look back through a speech that I gave. And then from there, now you have specific things that you can add onto your to-do list, and then go from there. So that's one big one. The other one is the structure, kind of creating a structure of focus. This has been massive for me. So I kind of go into like focus blocks or block time, some people refer to it. One of the most popular kind of productivity methods is like the Pomodoro method, created by like some teenagers in college that were struggling to get work done on, for example, exams. And they would take like a Pomodoro timer and set it for like an egg timer in the shape of like a tomato, hence the Pomodoro method, for 25 minutes. And they would just work on one thing. And this is very different from what most people do, which is like nowadays, I see this, for example, like working with other people, and they'll have their laptop and they'll have their phone like in between the keyboard of their laptop. And they're like, you're setting yourself up for distraction if you do that, compared to, or they're constantly switching, like they'll have 20 different tabs and they're constantly switching between this. And like science and psychology research shows that there's like a lag time, like from focusing on one thing to switching your focus, and your mind is kind of, it's like turning direction in a car. You have to slow down the car, you have to turn, you have to go in a different direction. So building in a structure, like what I do nowadays, and I'll have a task on my list, for example, and I'll block out like 1 hour, like for example, writing a next book or creating a next course, like 1 hour. And I set a timer, for example, and during that time, no distractions, no social media, no nothing, 1 hour. And I'm just training the focus muscle, but at the same time, I'm working for that 1 hour on one specific thing, and then I'll stop, take a break, whatever, and then go into another focus block after that point.
I love that focus block idea. Yeah. That's great. A lot of people, I feel, and especially in today's society, we're not really, the choice to multitask is a lot easier of a choice to make than to simply focus on one thing and just dive deep into it, to the point where a lot of people believe that they're pros at multitasking, when really they're just really good at switching between task after task, but they're still losing productivity in the process.
Yeah. And then, so I kind of treat it like myself, like kind of like a guinea pig for a lot of these ideas before I share them. So I experiment a lot with this, and I kind of, you can even extrapolate this. And that's what I did when I wrote my second book. I actually did this like at an extreme level, like take it from like a 25-minute Pomodoro block to 1 hour focus block and so on. And what I did basically was, for 4 days to write my second book, I locked myself in a hotel room for 4 days. No phone, no nothing. No distractions, no other work projects, no nothing. Literally just 4 days, me, hotel room, and a laptop to write the book. And went a little over, but within about 4.5 days, I wrote an entire like 200+ page book because of the focus. Like most people don't understand like how much latent potential there is when we cut out distractions and when we kind of get in the zone. And just to kind of wrap this up, one of the most fascinating examples for me, I wrote a newsletter about this to my email list just the other day, which is like the rocket. So they did, if you look at, for example, a rocket launching into space, what most people don't realize is about like 50% of the fuel that it takes to get a rocket from position up into space, like tens of thousands of miles, kilometers, hundreds of thousands of kilometers. I'm not sure exactly, but 50% of all the fuel that's used just to get it off is used just to get it off the first like 1 mile, 2 miles off the ground. So much energy is used to get kind of a rocket from a static position to a moving position. But then once it's moving, once it's already in motion, once it's already focused on something, now it's so much easier to sustain that. But most people never do that. Most people, like on a practical day-to-day example, they'll start one thing, but they'll never actually get into kind of the flow state, because they'll work on something for 5 minutes and then they'll switch to another thing and then have to restart, and their whole brain has to get into the zone again when they're starting again. Compared to like during the 4 days, it was kind of like I was just going in one direction. Everything was all about the writing the book, which is why that, for example, productivity feat was possible.
That's so powerful. I love that analogy of the rocket too. It's so true. Yeah. Okay, so let's take that idea you had of the main goal, right? So now we choose clarity. We finally have an idea of what we want, rather than looking at just the giant outcome of, as an example, writing a book. Let's break it down into different steps, right? So now we know what we should do. We now know what we could do to get that big result. Yeah. Now, what I found with people I work with is they know what they should do. They know what that little block of time they should put away to do something is. But they say that they lack motivation to do it, right? They should go to the gym. They should do this. They should do that. You specialize in motivation. So in that field, what would you recommend to somebody in order to help them become more motivated to do the things that they know they should do?
So there's a lot of elements about this. So I have a training program called Ignition Motivation Mastery Program, literally all about this. It's hard to like answer your question because that course is literally about 15 hours of training going into every single element, because motivation often breaks down into separate things. One of the best kind of most practical things I can give here is that there's actually a formula kind of for motivation. This came from Victor Vroom back in like the 1960s, 1970s. He publicized this formula based on kind of his studies of employees in the workplace and so on. And within that formula, there was 3 elements. The first one of those was called expectancy, which is like, do you believe you can do what's required? The second one was instrumentality, and the third one was valence. Complicated words. I didn't know what they meant until I Googled them and researched further. But expectancy times instrumentality times valence equals motivation. Each one of those, what that means is expectancy, which is, do you believe you can do what's required? And then instrumentality is, do you believe what you're doing that performance will lead to a particular result? And then the third one, valence, is, do you really want the result? And so when you kind of simplify that, it's how badly do you want the result that you want? How badly do you want something? Do you believe that you can, for example, get there, that you can make tangible results? Do you believe that you have control, for example, over the direction? And then do you believe that you can do what's required? And so each one of those things, so it kind of breaks down to self-belief. Like a lot of people, it's not that they're not motivated, they just don't believe that they can make something happen. They like really want something, but they don't really believe in themselves. Often this comes from, for example, failure. Like some people, they'll go on a diet, and before they even go on the diet or like an exercise program, it's inevitable that they're going to fail because they've come in with that mindset, like this isn't going to work anyway. And it kind of that kind of builds on itself. Like it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like if you don't believe that that the diet's going to work for you, for example, or the exercise program is going to work for you, you're not going to take full committed action. And so therefore, as a result of that, you're going to take like half-assed action, which is going to lead to poor results, which in turn is going to reinforce your belief that your mind is kind of going to go, oh, I told you it wasn't going to work. And then the next time it's like momentum.
Yeah.
That's one part. So building up your belief, and I have a whole process for that, but you're building up your belief by using references that you can do it, and you kind of change your level of belief. And now motivation becomes kind of automatic. Another one, for example, the last one there is like valence, like how badly do you want something, and really, really connecting with that. And I have a whole nother process for that as well. It's what I use when I work with clients, for example, to make changes and transformations in their life. But how badly do you want something and connecting with it? And so until you associate like so much pleasure to achieving this result, that it kind of becomes inevitable that you're going to get that you're going to do whatever you can to get there.
That's great. It's like a positive feedback loop. You do something, you get a positive result from it. You continue to do it because you feel good about doing it.
Absolutely.
I love that. So your program Ignition will help somebody to figure out what they want, but not just that, break it down into those 3 different things in order to achieve that result. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah. And so I break down each one of those 3. And then what I like to do, like just like your kind of approach, is like philosophy is great, but practicality is much better. So over the years, I've created kind of a process for each one of these. Like, for example, for belief, I call it the belief hacking process. And I have this kind of worksheet that I created, a framework that I created, and the whole visualization. So with the customers that go through that and clients that go through that, there's like a 20-minute visualization together with the worksheet that help you take, for example, the reasons why you do believe you could do something versus all that doubt and skepticism that we all face sometimes. And you kind of amplify that and you build that into your body. And so now you're filled with massive belief. And instead of like spiraling, instead of being in that self-fulfilling prophecy, you build up kind of positive feedback loop instead. So that's one of them. Another process that I created is I call it like a motive matrix. And I can't explain the name because there's like a half an hour explanation to exactly why and how it works and so on. But this is, for example, what I use when I help people break bad habits and build better ones, and even addiction. Like, for example, some people will come to me with like lifelong addictions, like smoking for 50 years, like, I don't know, like little bad habits, like drinking too much or biting their fingernails or things like that. That was one for me, for example, that got me kind of hooked on that. for the first basically 18 years of my life. I was biting my fingernails like pretty badly.
Me too.
Yes. And then I broke that in like 15 minutes. And that opened my eyes, like a lifetime basically for me, like 18, 19 years of biting my fingernails. I discovered a process and I used it, and within like 15 minutes, like it was gone, and it was automatic. Like no willpower required, nothing happened by basically rewiring my brain through that particular process. And that further like opened my eyes, and I did a whole bunch more research and created more stuff around that as well. But it's absolutely like crazy what the mind is capable of, what the body is capable of with the right tools, with the right strategies, with the right information, which again, the education system never taught us, and chances are never will. And so the job of what I'm doing, my personal work, the Potencia online education platform that I'm building, is to kind of fill in the gaps and give people what they really need to create an extraordinary life for themselves.
That's fantastic. Let's stay on that track, because I'm really curious about the whole, biohacking essence of rewiring these destructive habits that are holding a lot of people back. You mentioned people have come to you with drinking addictions and smoking and biting nails. So let's talk about somebody who went through the traditional education system. They didn't learn about finances the way that they should. They didn't learn about health. And as a result, they've developed all of these destructive habits, right? What would you recommend the first step to be for somebody who has a destructive habit that is looking to rewire it into something that serves them?
So when there's a lot of, for example, destructive habits, the big one, and this was shared about one of the great books about habits, is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. I can see that you've probably checked that one out as well. But he talks about like keystone habits. So if you have a lot of things, for example, in your life that aren't working out, pick one thing that if you change that, will kind of ripple out and create a whole new sense of belief, and then the rest will become easy, like dominoes. Like pick the big domino that once you make that one fall, the rest will kind of fall in line as well. So that's one thing for a lot of destructive habits. When it comes to one specific habit, so for me, this is I talk about this in the program, for example, but it's changing what your mind links pain and pleasure to, and not logically, but subconsciously. Like when you can change that, the bad habit kind of falls away naturally, almost automatically. You don't even need to think about it. And then the second part is that habits work in a particular way. Like they're not random. There's a reason. We kind of follow a mental process, an emotional process that makes us act in a particular way. Charles Duhigg talked about this at the basic level, which is that each habit has a trigger or a cue, something that sparks that habit. In the case of, for example, most cigarette smokers and so on, like tobacco products, it tends to be stress. Stress tends to be the emotional trigger that fuels that habit. Like they feel stress, and then the body, because it's done over years and years, like it's automatic. Like you don't need to consciously think about it. But the moment that you're stressed, now your brain starts to play out this habit loop. When it comes to, for example, having a cigarette. For other people, it's, for example, like alcohol. Some people will drink at parties. That's one emotional trigger. A lot of people, it's like drinking after a bad day. Like some people, they won't drink. They'll only drink when they want to forget their problems. And so again, that's a very, very similar trigger there. It's like the stress. And so some people find better ways to kind of handle stress. Some people, unfortunately, fall into worse ways, but you can, of course, change all of that. So the first one is getting really, really clear on those triggers. And I talk about some of the main like emotional triggers. So there are external ones like see, what you feel, and so on. But the main drivers are emotions. So a lot of habits are just kind of like methods that we've learned either consciously or like unconsciously fallen into for dealing with some of our kind of unconscious, underlying psychological and emotional needs. Like ones that we all share. Like at a biological level, it's the need for survival. And for example, like reproduction as well. That at the biological level, at the psychological and emotional level, we all have a need to get out of stress. It's just that some people develop better habits, more positive ones, like meditation gets you out of stress. Like deep breathing gets you out of stress. Like having a conversation with a friend and talking about your problems in that way is a much healthier way to get out of stress. And they work in the same way. They create the same emotional change in the body as, for example, smoking or drinking and so on. But again, so it's training how your brain kind of responds to those emotional triggers. So stress is a big one. Entertainment is a big one. Like we all have the need to feel engaged and entertained in life. Some people will spend like hours, days binge watching shows on Netflix. Other people will get massive entertainment and massive engagement from going and traveling. Of course, not possible right now, but traveling and having amazing adventures, or doing amazing things for their partner, or spending great time with family, or going into the city and having fun and having hobbies and things like that. So it's just different ways that we fulfill our needs.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You're a wealth of knowledge. We could talk for hours and hours on personal change, and you'd give so many different nuggets of info that people can actually use and take and apply. And I beg all of you watching right now, take one of these things that we're talking about, and one thing that really sticks out to you, one thing that you feel inside, and do it and apply it. Because Bogdan, he's just worked with so many people and has researched so much and has written so many books, which we're going to talk about in a second here, on personal change and really just taking action, because you can live whatever life you want. You just have to have clarity, take action towards it, and take the big chunk and chunk it down into actionable items. Beautiful, man. So I love your mission, Bogdan. Let me ask you this. You've written a lot of books. Your latest book is Self-Mastery. Can you give us a quick synapse of that book, and also tell us where we can find it?
So my latest book, Self-Mastery, kind of goes deep into who we are. Like, why are we the way we are? And so it goes deep into, for example, like how we get conditioned when we grow up to believe certain things, to think certain things, to behave in a certain way. Like a lot of beliefs, like a lot of fears, phobias, and all that stuff, it's passed down to us from our parents, from our upbringing, and so on. That's part of it. Like how we respond to some of the negative events that happen. We all have negative events. It's just that some people use that kind of as a springboard for success, and some people, unfortunately, crushes kind of their self-esteem if they didn't, for example, interpret it and create the meaning out of that in a specific way. And then, of course, the environment right now, there's so many elements of our environment that kind of shape our behavior as well. And so I go deep into all of that, but like kind of step by step, there are 7 different chapters in the book. It goes from the big level, which is like the introduction of the book, is the fact that for a lot of people, it's not necessarily the opportunities that we need. Like, it's not information and it's not opportunities that necessarily make the big difference between some people and high performing, high achieving individuals. Like, a lot of people will have great opportunities. They'll have a business opportunity. They'll have this, they'll have new dating apps. They'll have new like exercise programs, but they never do anything with it because they're not ready for it. Like they've never trained themselves to get the most out of it. And so that's kind of the essence of personal growth. And then from that point, it gives you a lot of like models for optimal decision making. There's a lot of stuff about rewiring and kind of changing a lot of this programming that we're given growing up, how to think about failure differently, which is a really, really big one, optimally, so that you kind of use it and failure becomes something that's positive, that helps you create the results that you want, how to kind of break out of certain social norms. So there's a lot there about rewiring your brain, basically for the health, for the relationships, for the finances, for the success that you want in your life. And you can get it, so I'm sure you'll link down below somewhere, but you can get it at getselfmasterybook.com.
Yes, guys, get this book. It's in the description. It'll change your life. I mean, whatever it is you're looking to change, this book will help you take the steps to do that. My final question for you, Bogdan, is where can we find you and connect with you so that we can see every new update that you have?
So also, I'm sure you'll link down below, but so the first one is bogdanjuncewicz.com. Very complicated last name and stuff like that. So it's probably easier to have a clickable link. And then the other one is the online education platform that I'm building. You can go to potentiaeducation.com. So POTENCIA education.com. And there you'll find some my work. So I've kind of transitioned from just myself, and over the past basically 6 months, 12 months, I partnered up with a whole bunch of experts in various fields. So for example, Tom Broadwell, who has like 19 years of experience as a personal trainer and conducting health seminars all around the world. We just launched his book all about like unconventional health and fitness, how you can strengthen your immunity, how you can lose weight and keep it off permanently, and so on. So that's, for example, health and fitness. Partnered up with another amazing couple from Singapore, who run releasing works. How do you release some of your emotional stuff that we pick up through life? We all do. How do you release some of that so that you can kind of move towards like subconscious blocks and things like that? How do you release that? We're working on products around, for example, like releasing money blocks and things like that, like NLP training and lots of different things and cool insights that we're building. But again, the goal is to kind of change people's lives and change education in that process. For now, just to kind of supplement all the missing things that the education system didn't teach us, and then to go from there.
You're doing just that, my friend. You're doing just that. I want to acknowledge you for a few things. The first thing I want to acknowledge you for is your positivity and your energy is absolutely contagious. And I think that that's something that's really, we're missing that in our society right now with all the bad news and you know, the pandemic and everything else going on. And it's just really a breath of fresh air to have your positivity on here just to cut through all that noise. I also acknowledge you for going on this mission in the first place to help people live a better life, because we have to, right? We have to give people what they're missing in the traditional education system. And again, I urge you, go in the description below, get Bogdan's book and follow Bogdan, because this guy's doing great things and you're going to want to see everything that he releases, because it's going to help you so that you can turn around and use your unique gifts to help others in the process. Bogdan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure that we will talk again. Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Awesome. To all of you, thanks so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button below and hit the like button if this video was valuable for you, so it can get sent to other people who could also use it in their life. And until we speak again, continue to be better.